colleagues and speakers. My name is Choucri Asmar. I work for Axon Health. My colleagues are sitting with you in the video. We need to name them because there are a lot. الكرتون أنا بتكلم عن ناس الكرتون دول الكوليجز معنا. Just to open. So I'm pleased to have with me today Dr. Ahmed Morsy, the head of the biomedical department in Cairo University. Please applaud. And the dear friend Mohamed Heikal, the head of the personalized healthcare chapter at Roche, and your continued experience. And I'm pleased to have you both with me. After a very inspiring session with Amber Medical, I will remove this easier. Can you hear me good? Everyone can hear good? Perfect. Till technology, we saw technology. We have seen in the past few months a need for everyone for a more personalized technology. We have seen that people are more aware of what they have the right to have. Healthcare awareness became much higher. And I would start with, since you have your mic already, with Dr. Heikal. I don't think it's working. Can you try? I will ask you the question. Yes, perfect. So, can we please start by defining what is personalized healthcare? What is the definition of what we are talking about today?
Can you hear me now? Better now? Okay. أنا كنت بقول إن I'm glad إن أنا معاكم النهاردة وإن دي my first time في Techne Summit and I'm glad that the organizer invited me to be part of this eminent summit. يعني simply personalized healthcare it's moving away from the one size fits all approach في الهيلث كير عموما وهنا لما بتكلم على الهيلث كير وانت مش بتتكلم على تريتمنت بس انت بتتكلم على تريتمنت وفيها كلمه كير فهي الفكره كلها ان انت ازاي تتعامل مع individuals even healthy individuals فازاي تموف from one size fits all لانك انت تراعي حته اليونيكنس بتاعت كل واحد فينا وكل واحد فينا ده اللي هو ياخد التيلر تريتمنت بتاعه اللي هو بيسموه كده بالبلدي ساعات اللي هو تريتمنت او انترفنشن على كارت اللي هو الفكره ان هو انت بتاخد اللي انت محتاجه بالظبط فده سيمبلي يعني هو ديزاين بالفلسفه بتاعه.
Thank you, Heikal. Dr. Morsy, if we, from the world of technology, what are the tools that can help everyone have more personalized or adequate healthcare to himself? How can a person knows his own data? How can a person or a doctor serve each person on its own, on his own?
سؤال جميل جدا هو ممكن أتكلم بالعربي. Anyone here who does not understand Arabic? Okay, so I have to stick to English. If we want to move away from the one-size-fits-all model to a more precise model and eventually to a personalized model, I think we will notice that some fronts lend themselves well, more than other fronts. So to answer your question, I want to start with the chronic disease management, for example. So chronic disease management, particularly with the prevalence of Internet of Things, which we call Internet of Medical Things, just to personalize it to healthcare. Tons of data. We collect tons of data every day. And it's becoming impossible for humans to be able to analyze this data accurately. So we really need technology to be able to analyze the data, come up with conclusions, and then come up with decisions how to intervene based on this conclusion. Chronic disease management is a great example, but another example, I can talk more about these areas later as the discussion evolves, omics-driven precision. So starting from something as serious as optimizing cancer therapy using pharmacogenomics, down to how to tailor the diet of a person using nutrigenomics, and so many milestones in between. So that's another area where technology actually can help. A third area is artificial intelligence, and everybody today is talking about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, we're just scratching the surface today in terms of artificial intelligence. But again, because we have a lot of data, AI can help us analyze that much data. But I'll give a different example. For example, people who go to the ICU and get put on a ventilator. There's something called weaning from the ventilator. When the time is right to take the person off the ventilator. If we take them off earlier, that's not good. And if we take them off later than what we should, that's not good either, because it can cause damage to the lung tissue. So this weaning, statisticians try to come up with models based on statistics and data available, but models based on artificial intelligence proved much more accurate. So that's another intervention in technology in the area of AI.
If I can stay with you, Dr. Morsy, and on the three examples you've said, and we have in the room, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of investors, what are the fields that, or the gaps that we have still actually in the market in Egypt, where entrepreneur or startups or investor can look for entrepreneur or startups to invest and research more and to solve the pain points that we still have in these three fields I mentioned?
That's another wonderful question. The opportunities in general are related to many areas, in fact. But for me, I see upskilling is a major area. Upskilling means to help a doctor with only 4 years of experience appear as if they had 14 years of experience or 15 years of experience. That's upskilling. Error reduction, particularly in dosing, for example, related to precision medicine. Error reduction, I don't know if you know about the report that was issued almost 10 years ago in the United States. It was called "To Err is Human." And it said that 100,000 deaths occur every year because of preventable medical errors. Not because of medical errors, because of preventable medical errors. And later they said, no, it's 400,000 patients. So that's like how many? 200 airplanes crashing, and everyone on board dies every year. If this happens, the aviation industry would have been shut down. This happens every year, and the aviation industry does not get shut down. So error reduction is another area, and scaling up, making healthcare accessible, and accessible in a more personalized way is the third area.
On that point, on the accessibility and the personalized approach, I would come to you, Heikal, and we had this discussion a lot on maybe on chronic disease management and diabetes management. Being responsible for the client side in the organization I work for, Axon Health, I always think of the pain points that the customer face and how we can solve it to them. With the work you are doing, and you're doing a lot actually at Roche, what are the pain points you are trying to solve for the patients in general, and for the awareness of the problem they might solve with more personalized healthcare? So it's the pain points, and maybe they are not aware that they are in a pain point and they can get better things. So.
Okay, thank you, Choucri. Well, actually, this drive my answer to mainly to the challenges the healthcare system now faces. First of all, the major challenge the healthcare system faces النهارده هو limited resources. أقوى healthcare system في العالم, the strongest, has limited resources. ليه؟ عشان في increasing demands بتحصل من patients. If patients are more aware now, if patients are more educated, if patients have access to a lot of information. النهارده الديماندز دي خلت في strains جامده على الهيلث سيستم. دي one of the challenges that الهيلث كير سيستم بيفيس. حاجه ثانيه من الهيلث كير سيستم بيفيس ان هو انت النهارده الجروينج بوبيليشن اللي قاعده تزيد دلوقتي على الهيلث كير سيستم. الجروينج بوبيليشن احنا بنهايه القرن ال 21 ده احنا we're expecting ان احنا نريتش 11 بليون. انت الايجنج بوبيليشن اللي هي الايج اللي هو فوق ال 65 اللي هم بيضغطوا على الهيلث كير سيستم، اكتر ناس بيضغطوا على الهيلث كير سيستم، اكسبكتد ان احنا في ال 30 سنه الجايين ان احنا نوصل ل 16% من التوتال بوبيليشن above 65 years. فدي ارقام كبيره قوي. احنا النهارده 9%، النهارده 9% above 65. فدي these really big numbers. الكرونيك diseases like cancer, الانسيدنس اوف كانسر في ال 20 سنه الجايه it will increase by 60%. ف all these challenges put strains on the healthcare system. وهنا انا ما اتكلمتش على البانديميك وازاي دي حاجه جديده حصلت from nowhere وبعد كده الحته دي عملت سترين اكتر كمان على الهيلث كير. ف all this يعني هو require ان هو يبقى فيه profound transformation powered with digital technology في حته الهيلث كير. ف this is how we see the major pain point في الهيلث كير من ناحيه الهيلث كير سيستم، من ناحيه الحكومه بتواجه الموضوع ده ازاي. another things حتى في هنا بنتكلم على الاندستري، انا بشتغل هنا في شركه روش، فانا هكلمك على الفارما اندستري كمان. الفارما اندستري انت النهارده عشان تطلع one molecule to the market انت this is a too lengthy and costly process. يعني this is a really costly and lengthy process. يعني انتوا عارفين ان هو عشان اطلع دواء واحد في السوق تقريبا في الانفستمنت تقريبا بتبقى 10 مليون دولار almost، انا بدي average numbers. worst time study of data احنا بنتكلم في around 8 years. ليه؟ عشان احنا معتمدين على clinical trials اللي هو الكلينيكال ترايلز اللي هي بتبقى ليها، عارفين انتوا الفيز 1 فيز 2 اللي عارف اللي هو عنده هيلث باك جراوند عارف الحته دي. النهارده الحته دي محتاجه تروح دلوقتي الدايركشن ان احنا لا نعتمد على ريل وورد داتا، نعتمد على اللي بيحصل النهارده اون ذا جراوند، ابعد عن الكلينيكال ترايل او مش ابعد كومبلمنت الكلينيكال ترايل لو هو ده بشكل احسن. فده برضه بيحط التشالنج على الاندستري انك انت النهارده ادويتك جايه غاليه وهيلث كير سيستم اصلا بيسفر اصلا من الديماند الزياده. لو بصيت برضه الاسبكت بقى لو احنا بنتكلم على الدكاتره، النهارده الدكاتره اللي هم بياخدوا قرارات في العلاج بالنسبه للعيانين، الدكاتره النهارده they are really struggling with the amount of data they receive. يعني انت النهارده الداتا كلها اللي بتيجي للدكتور هو مش عارف يهضمها اصلا. يعني الداتا دي يعني you know something فيه، يعني في statistics بتقول ان الميديكال داتا بتدبل كل 73 يوم. يعني كل 73 يوم الميديكال داتا اللي موجوده بتدبل. يعني whose mind هو كان توليريت كل ده. فانت النهارده حته الارتفيشال انتليجنس والداتا اناليسيس وازاي ان انت يبقى عندك كلينيكال ديسيجن سبورت بتساعد الدكتور، دي حاجه بقت مهمه جدا. فذيس از از ويل ده بوت ان هو انت النهارده لو حطيت كل التشالنجز دي، انا اتكلمت على الهيلث كير سيستم، اتكلمت على الاندستري، اتكلمت على الفيزيشن، انت لو فضلنا ماشيين زي ما احنا كده this is unsustainable. فهو الديجيتال تكنولوجي از سولوشن، هو مش ده اوبشن. يعني الديجيتال تكنولوجي وبيرسونلايزنج هيلث كير this is the solution عشان بعد كده تاخد قرارات. القرارات دي تقدر بيها انك انت مش بس تكريت healthy population، لا هو الموضوع ان انت كمان انت you will make right decisions for using the funds efficiently، فبالتالي هتعمل كمان lower cost to the society. But this is how we see the يعني the pain points will open the solution for the personalized healthcare for it.
Thank you هيكل. يمكن اضيف حاجتين. احنا من اول ما جينا الماركت بننقل من being only an insurer to also a healthcare provider. Two of the main things we are trying to work on related to the personalization of healthcare is to create awareness for the patient that his data is his right. His data is owned by him. His data he can access it anytime. He can have the understanding of the transparency to understand his data. This is one thing that is really important, and I see here my colleague from the medical department, and the challenge is to train the doctor to communicate that where doctors are thinking that they own the data and they don't share it with the patient. But the personalization is a work that we are trying to do on both sides, from a patient awareness perspective and from a doctor's transparency perspective, to create this more using the data and the wealth of data that the doctor receives into personalizing the treatment or personalizing the approach to the patient, and vice versa, the patient to know and understand and see that he is different and he is special, and that his case required 1, or his case required 2, or his case required 3. Doctor, in the biomedical engineering department, how the student can understand to help doctor on this approach for transparency, how this approach for transparency of personalization is induced into the curriculum in university?
It's a great question. We have many problems with the concept of data, and we try to teach students that this is the artificial intelligence era, AI, and AI lives and feeds on data. So without data, we will not have AI. And again, back to the personalization and precision point, you need to have local data for local populations and regional populations in order to make sure that any AI algorithms, algorithmic assets actually will work just as well on local populations and local data. And they learn about the challenges. I actually teach healthcare information systems, and in that class in particular, I teach them about the challenges of dealing with data. So almost everyone today says data is the new oil. Data is the new oil, yes, but unextracted oil has no value.
Not organized oil has no value.
Exactly. And also look at the price difference between the crude oil and the processed, the refined oil. So it's important. We have tons of data living inside us. We have tons of data not being shared, not being compiled, not being collected. We don't have data assets here, healthcare data assets, which represent our population. That's very important. So students start learning about all these issues surrounding data.
Thank you, Doctor. Heikal, let me ask you a question where I am in question in it as a provider. As a pharma company, you see the whole spectrum from the new graduates that come out of universities. You see the providers, you see the pharmacies. And you see the doctors, the big providers, the hospital chains, the clinic chains, and you see the whole spectrum to try to, and you see the payers, the insurance companies, that are always accept and then not do anything. And what do you see this crowd of investors and entrepreneurs can help filling the gaps between all this ecosystem to make sure that this personalization of healthcare from you as one of the players as a pharma company can induce this ecosystem to have one cycle so things bring to a result? I see a lot that a lot of pharma companies are trying to launch something, providers trying to launch something else, insurers trying to do something on CR level, corporate relation, the universities and the curriculums are trying to adopt what's new, but the whole ecosystem is not sealed together. What, in your opinion, can solve that?
I hope you help me as well in the answer of this, because one of the objectives of attending such meetings is to make these type of networks with people who share the same vision, so that we can work together and achieve this together. So at the beginning, you know, Roche is the biggest biotech company in the world, and although this is not a one company mission. This is not a one company mission that can do this. No one company can create this data-driven healthcare system. It requires this type of collaboration between the full innovation ecosystem and the pharma ecosystem and the industry tech ecosystem. So this is not like a one solo player goal, or being even in the center. We need to all understand that we are putting the patient in the center and we are all around them. Not Roche, for example, in the center and we are around the, no, it's patient in the center and AXA around the center. Academia is around the patient as well, and that's what. So working together, finding innovative solutions, startups. Startups are very famous for being these speedboats, that they can go for innovative solutions and find fast solutions. We are, as big ships in the corporates, slow to achieve it. So we need to work with startups on this. We need to help them, we help the startups to grow in their business. We need to adjust our procurement process, make ourselves reachable for them. So this is how we see it. We need to make this type of, all these type of coalition to achieve this mission. So this is my, I'm trying to improvise here, but this is my high level answer for this.
Let me emphasize on 2 points you mentioned. Customer in the center. So if I want to create like a collage between all the different stakeholders, the center needs to be the customer and I need to solve their pain points. You said something else regarding startup and accessibility to corporate and to academia, and it's I can say that we realize that we, as big corporates, we cannot operate on these new innovations without having startup pulling us, because we are like big bears walking, and the innovation can only happen with agility and people that solve a certain pain point. They propose it to big corporate, we can propose the client base, we can propose the expertise to achieve this success. As a person was asking about data, and in the previous session, that no access to data, so we cannot try. So this is what corporate can give, to access to a sample of data, so we can prove concept and then move to solving the patient pain points. Doctor, do you want to add something on this collage?
I want to add that spotting synergies is probably the first step. Yes, patient, customer must be in the center, and we're lucky because the definition of customer has changed. It used to be patient, and now it's patient and consumer. And the ratio of patients to consumers is really huge. That's a huge opportunity for everyone. So spotting synergies, these can turn into opportunities for collaboration. Another thing is, it's a little bit easier to collect data to do research than to collect data to do commercial activities. So maybe this can smooth out the process. Let's start collecting data to do some research, and then it might be easier for all of us to collaborate, cooperate, and then take it to the next step, the commercial piece.
Another question I have is regarding to launch activities for personalization of healthcare or precision healthcare. Always, it's nice initiatives, and it doesn't, out of experience, regretfully, it doesn't lead to anything because it's not sustainable. It doesn't create sustainability from who will pay, who will provide. Is it the one action for a campaign of 3-4 months, or it's a sustainable thing? How can we, and we have been in this circle, I think, for the last 3-4 years, between pharma company, insurance company, providers. It's in this circle. We launch bursts of specific personalization of healthcare, awareness approach, but it's never sustainable. This is something we're trying to crack, but I would love to hear both of you on how to crack the sustainability of launching something like this, from the financials of it, from the customer to understand it, etc.
The first step is always to try to show value. If you can show value, demonstrate value, then you are on the right track for sustainability. Sometimes the real value is not the first step. Sometimes you need to combine it with something else that makes commercial value, or maybe a PR value, or something like that. So bundling might be in this case. And I think back to you.
Yeah, actually showing value, this is the really important thing, as well as showing early experiments. So if we have this type of experiment that's successful in one place, you can showcase this experiment. This help in more than awareness. كده انت تقدر تساعد في حته انك انت you are not speaking about an idea, you are speaking about the real thing happening on the ground in a certain place. So early experiments as well, I would add it to the showing the value. This would be good.
I love this point because showing an expertise or in a market or in a small sample that this worked, that this created value, created saving maybe, created better decision making for doctors, better understanding of my case for people, more awareness. So showing an example is the solution we are talking about for long, but to reach that point is the challenging part. I would love to have 15 minutes and open the floor for questions. So please. Can someone, لو سمحت في حد ممكن ادي المايك تاني.
Thank you everyone for the great discussions here. هو الموضوع is very complicated very sophisticated from different angles. My name is Mohamed. I'm working in digital transformation area actually. وحقيقة احنا محتاجين ان احنا نبني what's called digital trust. والديجيتال تراست مش هيجي غير بالفاليو وانها تبقى very easy to use. Going things complicated مش wouldn't help the system. خصوصا لان I believe in the pharmaceutical industry او ال healthcare system خلينا نقول will lead the next wave of innovation because of COVID. هي COVID غير لنا حاجات كثيره جدا. فاحنا محتاجين ان احنا نشوف ازاي how to build this ecosystem من احنا we shouldn't think of the new inflection point from the same old perspective. It wouldn't work. I can assure you. فاحنا we need to reinvent everything in the digital format. Actually everything, from the research, from the commercialization, from the medical trial, from كل حاجه يعني from the health care insurance system. ان الامور اختلفت الحقيقه جدا. I think this is one of the most important lessons learned from COVID. ان احنا we were working in silos and we've been يعني the pandemic hit us a lot and يعني give us a warning signal that يعني we haven't experienced this in a century. That's why يعني I can see all the pillars here on the stage, which is most of the stakeholders. فاحنا back to حتى even لما هيك كان بيتكلم على حته الستارت ابس. احنا we are creating more fragile instruments in the market. They go to the market and they die and disappear. فاحنا we need to help them to understand that entrepreneurship is not the object by itself. We need to turn their mindset to become not entrepreneurs, become business people, dealing with suppliers, dealing with customers, dealing with finance. فكرة entrepreneurship has been promoted for a very long time, and I think it's becoming one of the time bombs that we are facing now and in the near future. وكان في حاجة كمان هي الورد هيلث اورجانيزيشن عشان الموضوع is very sophisticated عشان new standards. خصوصا ان كوفيد push us a lot ان احنا to take major massive steps towards having طبعا. فعشان كده في النهارده الورد هيلث اورجانيزيشن trying to set new standards. عشان انا هنا بتكلم على الاريا بتاعت الهيلث فيري كريتيكال عشان انا بتكلم على حياه بني ادمين. I'm not developed a nice app on the internet or on Google Play or Apple Store. هي فالفكره دي لا هي has to be regulated بس regulated in a different format. regulated from the concept that we are living in a digital era, that we are connected and we don't have any option other working together. هي يعني otherwise احنا يعني ان احنا we're still in the middle of the crisis. It's not over. The social impact is not calculated yet. The economic impact is not calculated yet. فاحنا still in the middle of the disaster. It's time to reconsider everything, and I mean everything. Sorry being long بس غصب عني.
Just to emphasize on a few points, you mentioned that COVID pushed that healthcare would lead innovation. Intuitive, or if I use other words from what you said, intuition, doctor friendliness, user friendliness of what we are using, and to bring an easy approach or accessibility. This is what yes. To make it easy so it can move on. A new approach that is easy, accessible, and without worry. Any comments before we take any question? Please.
مساء الخير يا وجه. سؤالي موجه لحضرتك يا دكتور. يعني حضرتك قلت نقطتين that are very interesting for me. النقطة الأولانية how to quantum leap young MDs with 3 or 4 years of experience عشان يبقوا عندهم يعني أو لكن عندهم 10 or 15 years of experience. Can you elaborate on that point? Yeah, أول سؤال. السؤال الثاني حضرتك you differentiate between the consumer and the patient. برضه أحب أعرف الفرق من وجهة نظر حضرتك ما بين the consumer and the patient.
Sure. Very quickly, I'll give one example to answer the first question. For example, computer-aided diagnosis. It is not supposed, a computer-aided diagnosis solution is not supposed to replace doctor, but to augment, to help the doctor, particularly when they get tired at the end of the day, and when they're about to make an error for one reason or another, and when they're still young and inexperienced. So computer-aided diagnosis, and I guess one thing I would like to say about replacing doctors, the question, will AI replace doctors? The best answer I heard is no, but doctors who use AI will replace those who don't. So very quickly, that's for the first question. The second question, when we include wellness to illness, then a person who wants to make sure that they stay healthy, we cannot call them patients, right? I find it actually depressing to call that person a patient. So, but I can call them healthcare consumers, and then the circle gets much, much bigger. Yes, health conscious people. And it also includes prevention, for example.
The holistic approach to health.
Screening. We don't screen for patients, we screen everybody, ideally. So these are healthcare consumers, not patients.
And we're trying to emphasize this in the healthcare industry. Where in our company, the department I work with my colleagues is called the client department. It's not the patient department. So it's all about how to create a holistic approach to health from people when they are well, when they are sick, when they have a chronic disease, or to hold a healthy lifestyle during their whole life. And another point, when somebody he comes with somebody else, so all of them are customers. Maybe a mom comes with her son who's sick, or a son comes with his mom who's sick. So they are all customers. Maybe they are not sick, but they are customers of this ecosystem, and they need to be treated with transparency, with care, with compassion in the whole ecosystem, whether they are the sick person or not. That is Dr. Nihal.
I have just a small remark about the expression of consumers. I would like to put it into discussion when the colleague said we need to create an environment of trust, and when I look at it from the patient's or from the people's perspective, consumer, I relate with capitalism. I'm sorry if I say this. So I would like to have it customer. I think it's a better definition because consumption comes with capitalism, comes with business, and I want to get money out of your pocket. So I think to create that culture of trust, we have to be cautious about what definitions we take.
Very good, Mark. Thank you.
So customer or client, no more consumers. We want people to consume less health and be healthy.
Actually, I just wanted to comment on one point that you mentioned. I believe that the early entry point for startups to be able to get over this and to be able to collaborate together and help each other is the physician's mindset. So maybe this is a point for you, Dr. Morsy, to clarify. Is the physicians, they always compete about the data. They believe that they own the data, and there is a problem to get the data out of their office. So basically, whenever you have an approach, all the startups, they're doing their best, working 24/7, and then the startup, it dies. So basically, you give them an automated system, user simplicity, for free, whatever you do. And then you go and you approach people, physicians I'm speaking. So basically everyone, they refuse to share the data. This is my data, and they never refer to the patient as the owners of the data. So I believe the thing which might be another opportunity for startups to work in is changing the mindset of the physicians themselves. Is that whenever you give out the data, you build up the AI where you can get upscale. So this is maybe something that we can work on a model where you can convince the physicians that sharing data is the entry point for this. We can never change the healthcare system if everyone is resistant. So I don't know, man. Maybe another point that Choucri mentioned is the loop. Everything is there, but everything is fragmented. You can never get everything in one place. So I believe it's just a mindset. So if we need to think about how can we collaborate, maybe the joint forces of all the stakeholders in this room, you can convince the doctors or change the mindset that sharing is the entry point. So that's it. Thank you.
Very good point. Sharing and transparency. And in my opinion, when customer will push about having their data, while customer will push on having interoperability, I go to this doctor and I take my data that I own, my medical data, and go to another doctor. This is where doctor will have to abide by this. Do you want to comment on this point? We discussed it a lot in the past.
Yes, actually we're discussing this in the back, me and Choucri, about the data and how physicians usually stick to having the data for themselves. So ultimately what we want is like, we have this type of a digital loop of sharing data between the what's happening on the real ground and what's happening in the research. So consider it a loop. What's happening on the real ground is feeding the research, and the research is feeding what's happening on the real ground with the new molecules and the study. So this is the ultimate objective. So to achieve this transparency for data, digital trust should be in place.
Something. Yeah, but when it's owned by the person himself, this is the key. And something we've been saying for the last 4 years in Techne Summit. I remember the first session I attended as a participant in Techne Summit, or as a speaker. It was about data and how we can share data. And the key word is interoperability. And we're still, as now being a provider, being a pharma, being another provider, we cannot communicate data to each other. We are afraid to communicate data to each other. So we need this link. We need that somebody comes and tell me, if the patient approves, I will give you the link to communicate to another hospital. For example, we are doing primary and secondary care. At a certain point, the patient will require a referral to a hospital to do an operation. How can I share this file of the customer to this hospital, and this hospital to read it and get the data, and the client to be the star in the middle, and he doesn't feel that he needs to carry a lot of things with him. This interoperability, we're always working on it, but we didn't crack it yet in Egypt and in many, many markets. I remember Estonia, it's the country where they solved this data interoperability between all the providers of Estonia. And it's a government initiative. Now, the government is trying with the national healthcare system, but we need, as startups, as private provider, as pharma company, as academia, to push on this interoperability, that the data is the ownership of the patient and not the ownership of the provider or whoever write it. Any other question? We have 2 minutes left. Yes? Tomasz.
Doctor, you said doctors who use AI will replace who will not use AI. That means every doctor has to learn artificial intelligence and programming, Python and so on, or just know how to use it and adapting with it.
Well, learn just enough to be able to operate the technology efficiently. Learn just enough to be able to avoid any legal issues with the technology. So they will not be required to build machine learning models themselves. But one of the problems, interestingly, with the slow adoption of AI is explainability. So we have a model, and then it says it's 90% cancer. Why? How? Where did that come from? Explainability is a huge problem, and it will not be solved by computer scientists alone, engineers alone. I think doctors will have to participate in solving this explainability problem. Otherwise, the field will take a very long time to take off.
One last question.
Thank you, Choucri. Hello, my name is Hussein Matar. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of Axon Health. So getting back to your comments about the doctors who are using artificial intelligence to replace ones who don't use it, we have, I think, a very big example that we are now living in, which is Netflix replacing the other entertainment networks, because Netflix have managed to reach this level of using artificial intelligence, managing the data. I think all of us know that the TV show Mawara Tabi'a Paranormal is deemed to be a hit even before released, because they used the artificial intelligence to understand what is the customer need in this region, in Egypt specifically, and they have engineered a product that address the needs of the customers. So they have collected all the data from the customers based in the region, and this is how we reach this one. Before, I think Netflix, the TV producers used to do a pilot to test it before. Netflix doesn't do that. They release the full season. They produce the full season and they release the full season, because they use artificial intelligence in every production they make. So the same can apply to healthcare as well. In the topic that we are discussing now, which is personalized healthcare. So we are depending on the government to do a lot of initiatives and collaboration in this part to achieve this maturity. However, Netflix is not a governmental institute. They have utilized the data that they have collected properly, and they have produced a very efficient and a very successful product in that regard. So my question to Dr. Heikal and Roche, you already have a lot of data. It's not, I know, all structured and all, in a structured manner. However, how can we use the data that we already collect, the pharmaceuticals specifically, because you have a huge pool of data? How do you utilize this data in the form of providing a personalized healthcare in the areas that you cover in Roche? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it will take me to dig deeper a little bit in what's happening in the pharma. I'm not sure we have this time, but I'll try to answer it very briefly. In pharma, we have a big amount of data, actually, yes. But if we are speaking about our vision of the amount of data that we really want to achieve, we are still in the baby steps, in the stone age of data collection, even for the pharma. Because we are depending on the data mainly on the clinical trials. What we are missing a lot is what's happening on the real ground. This what we are not missing. We're missing. So in Roche, if I'm speaking about Roche specifically, we are now seeking a lot of alliances and acquisitions with data companies that work on the real world data, companies that work on collecting market insights like genomic profiling data, omics. So, and we are depending on these companies in our research to develop better innovation for the treatment. So we are in the start for data because we have a lot of data, yes, but in clinical trial, but we are seeking to have more data from the real world practice and what's happening on the real ground. So I'm just highlighting بس كده حاجة خفيفة كده.
Yeah, if I may comment quickly on that, thank you. So for the entrepreneurs in the house, please take a closer look at a standard called FHIR, F-H-I-R, because this is the upcoming standard that will solve data interoperability, and this can represent a great opportunity for you as an entrepreneur. Also for researchers, also for policymakers, and building data assets is a great opportunity. Dr. Heikal said that they are actually reaching out to companies that are building data assets and also building algorithmic assets to analyze those data. So if you are looking for an area, if you are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur and looking for a viable area, real-world evidence based on real-world data, based on the Internet of Medical Things and Devices is a great area. So again, please take a closer look at it. Just a piece of advice.
And to back your point up, we have been using FHIR to connect with interoperability with the lab results, for example, to come to the doctor and to the patient. We have been using Segment for understanding the customer needs, so we can communicate content right to a diabetes person, to communicate content on diabetes,
yes.
A mother to communicate content on children and what she should expect. So things like that are very important for people to feel they are talking to. You talked about Netflix, but the examples of Instagram or Facebook, they simply understand what you are expecting and what is your zone. And we need to use this in healthcare so people can be more aware, be more trusting, be more intuitive into selecting certain things. Not from a consumer perspective to push things, but to give more data to customers.
Customer, not consumer.
Yeah, consumer
Consumer is bad.
We don't want to
Customer
push
is
them to consume, but to give customer. So, Dr. Morsy and Heikal, I really thank you for this quick panel.